Good morning. It's time now for Storm Watch. And on this Wednesday, there is a chance for some strong thunderstorms in a few places around the country. Also a chance for some flooding rains. And we'll detail that coming up in just a moment. But first of all, it's time for the look at the tropics. And this edition of your tropical update, first of all, starts off with, the hurricane frequency. Now, at least for June and July, things are relatively quiet in the tropics. But by the time we hit August, and definitely we're in the month of August now, that's when the frequency for tropical storms and hurricanes really starts to go up. And then we see that things reach a climax on September the 10th. That is the peak of the hurricane season. And as we move into the month of August, we start to see the equatorial waters in the Atlantic warming up considerably. So now a good part of the Atlantic becomes a breeding ground for tropical storms. So the areas shaded in red, those are the primary areas that we look for tropical development during this month. And having said that, we have a few areas of disturbed weather, some tropical waves working their way towards the west. Nothing, though, is showing any eminent signs of organization. One area, though, that we continue to monitor has been a low-pressure system just off the southeastern shoreline. We see that twisting and the swirling motion with the clouds. That's indicative of an upper-level low. We also have a surface low, too, over this area. Now, this low-pressure area, though, is showing signs that it's cold core in nature. So it's not even tropical in nature. But nonetheless, if it continues to sit and spin over this area, there is a chance that it may evolve into something more tropical. So as a result, it is something that does bear some watching. At any rate, though, throughout the day today, we'll be seeing some scattered showers and thunder showers flaring up from the Outer Banks of North Carolina and then running southward towards the east coast of Florida. Back into the Gulf of Mexico, kind of quiet for the time being. Cloud zone, a few spotty showers have been flaring up around the Bay of Campeche. We've had a few scattered showers, too, across the Caribbean. But the area that definitely bears some watching has been this little tropical wave that continues to work its way across the Leeward Islands. We've been seeing some heavier downpours and some thunderstorms. A large area convection continues to drift towards the west at about 10 to 15 miles per hour. Right now, though, it's not showing much in the way of organization. A little bit farther towards the east, a few more tropical waves. A rather weak system continues to approach Trinidad and Tobago, and a few more tropical waves farther out towards the Atlantic. And then we watch another tropical wave that is just now coming off the coastline of Africa. It doesn't have much convection with it, not much organization, but at any rate, it continues to drift towards the west. Now, as we head towards the eastern Pacific, though, we have Tropical Storm Estelle, which is far weaker than what it was last week at this time. At any rate, though, we have Tropical Storm Estelle still packing winds of 40 miles per hour, and right now it's moving off towards the west rather slowly at some 11 miles an hour. Now, the forecast for Estelle indicates that it will continue to weaken. Right now, we have some drier air getting entrained with a tropical storm, and it's also encountering some cooler waters out across the Pacific. So that will eventually cause the demise of Estelle. So again, Estelle will continue to weaken as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours or so. For Hawaii, you're looking in fine shape, pretty quiet this morning. Some light trade winds, that's about it. And then we watch quite a few clouds and showers and thunder showers lined up right across the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, and that's basically just about it. Now, a couple of these clouds, though, a couple of these cloud masses look fairly ominous, or at least there does appear to be maybe some type of organization trying to take place. So these showers and thunderstorms poised just off the coast of Mexico and Central America certainly bear some watching as they continue to work their way towards the west. Now, heading into the West Pacific, though, boy, we definitely have a lot of activity here. We had Typhoon Otto that came over across Taiwan the other day, packing winds up to 80 miles per hour. Now this tropical system continues to work its way across China, and our primary concern with this will be heavy rain and the possibility for more serious flooding over parts of China. At the same time, we see another large mass of clouds just to the east of the Philippines. This is also an area that bears some considerable watching, as this could be another tropical system trying to take shape just to the east of the Philippines. But elsewhere, as we head stateside, all eyes remain focused on the slow-moving system that's carving a path across the nation's midsection. And we have good news and bad news with this system. It has brought some beneficial rains across Texas, but unfortunately in some places the rain has been coming down so hard and so fast that we've had some reports of localized flooding, and still some flood warnings are out for Mason County over south central Texas, right around the San Angelo area, some soaking downpours there. Showers and thunderstorms too continue to work their way across the Great Lakes area, and this will be fairly persistent for a good part of the day. Lingering showers, lingering storms, and we could see that some of these thunderstorms could pack some small hail, heavy torrential downpours and gusty winds. So watch out today from Detroit and Chicago down through Dallas. It could be rather stormy.
All this atmospheric energy coming together.
Drama, passion, suspense, tropospheric undulations. Every night on Weather Center PM.
Please do not cross ropes. Do not use key. Introducing the only compact import brand truck with 4 doors.
And thanks for joining us for a Storm Watch and the Tropical Update. And I guess if you're watching us from Wisconsin, you could say it is the Tropical Update for sure, as the tropical downpours are affecting greater Milwaukee. The heavens have opened up, and it is just teeming out there right now. We'll check that out on radar in just a second. But first, let's see what's happening in the Gulf of Mexico and the rest of the tropics with Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Mark. We're going to stick a little farther south in Wisconsin for right now, but let's see what's going on out there. We have a few minor trouble spots, but overall we're in pretty good shape for the first week in August. We've been talking about a little low pressure center off the coast of the Carolinas. That's still there, but not doing too much. We'll show you that in a second. Little trough of low pressure in the northern Gulf of Mexico. It's not doing too much either, but the thunderstorms are on the increase in a little weak low pressure center there just off the coast of Louisiana. We'll look at that. We had a tropical wave moving through, sort of splitting as we saw yesterday, and now it's got under a rather favorable upper level environment the last 12 hours, and we've blossomed into a big thunderstorm cluster, and we'll look at that a little bit closer also. Let's first go to the Gulf of Mexico. Here we are here. We've had that pesky little trough of low pressure. Westerly winds on the south side, easterly winds on the north side. Now we detect a very weak low pressure center. And when I say very weak, I mean the winds are 10 to 15 miles per hour and the pressures are 1,017 millibars. So not too much to worry about, but a little weak low pressure center there. We can see it a little bit better in the radar image of the clouds moving. The rain area is moving. Here they're moving from the west, spiraling around to a little center right near the mouth of the Mississippi. Not much to worry about yet, but we'll keep you updated and keep our eyes on it for you. Now also we've been looking in the Caribbean Sea, and we saw yesterday a cluster of thunderstorms there that we didn't expect to do anything, and that has since dissipated. Tropical wave was moving toward Puerto Rico. A portion of it broke off, and as it did, this southern portion has become very active. The flow is what we call difluent or divergent aloft, and the flow is coming out of the south here and out of the north here, and so it's allowing the air underneath to rise, and we've got some thunderstorm activity. We can see that a little bit better here. Here's a northern portion of the tropical wave here. It's not doing too much. It's under a very stable environment. You can see the little low-level spin right about in here. But the southern portion of it that's outrun the northern portion, because the trade winds are faster here, is under a more favorable environment. We don't expect any development the next 24 hours, and there's no surface signature of a low pressure center, but just the idea of thunderstorm clusters. We'll have to watch that the next day or so. You can see right behind this sort of a grayish, just a very light tinted gray area back in here compared to up in here. That area is the African dust associated with the stronger trade winds moving to the west. Now farther north, we've been looking at that weak low pressure center off the Carolinas. It's still there. There's some sort of cloudy, rainy weather off the Hatteras region there, but no development expected. We have an upper level low pressure center right over the top of that, so we're not expecting any development from that. This is another upper level low pressure center producing thunderstorms, but nothing in the way of tropical development at the surface, so we're in great shape there. Far out into the Atlantic off the African coast, we've watched a huge area of thunderstorms over Africa. It's moved off the coast. It's dissipated rather quickly. Tropical waves still in there, but rather weak. We have a very strong surge of high pressure that's come south into the central Atlantic. That's keeping everything in check, so we're in great shape. First 10 days of August, we typically have on average 1 storm or hurricane every other year, 49 storms. Be prepared at all times. The hurricane season's going to peak soon. Out in the Pacific, we were watching yesterday Estelle, and Estelle, what's left of Estelle, is way out here. You can see no real deep thunderstorms, just a few high clouds and a little low cloud swirl. And we're now watching this area for possible development into a tropical depression the next 12 to 24 hours. It could do that. But it's moving to the west, away from land, which is good news. Here's the latest on tropical depression Estelle, 35-mile-per-hour winds, moving to the west-northwest at 13. As you can see on the satellite imagery here, there's really not too much to worry about there. It's just a low cloud swirl and not much of a threat to anyone at this stage of the game. And tropical storm Typhoon Otto has landfallen in China. It's since being downgraded very quickly, and all that's left here is some shower activity associated with all the rain and thunderstorms there. Let's get back to Mark and see what he's got going across the country.
All right, and more of the same around the Great Lakes, and that means heavy rain. This front will be the gathering point for the rains, and check it out here. Here's Milwaukee, the beer city, just being inundated right now. It is coming down, and we'll have flooding problems in through here today. Stay with us. Coming up in just a moment, we'll talk more about these heavy rains in the Midwest on Weather Center.
It's gray skies as fog, flooding, and thunderstorms plague the Midwest. When will sunshine brighten the picture? Find out on Weather Center after your local forecast.
So it's true, isn't it? You guys really are moving?
Yeah.
Well, that's just great.
Well, listen, they have to sell the house first.
So?
Well, selling a house takes time.
Some locally heavy rains and some flood warnings in some areas of the Midwest, and Texas gets some much-needed rain to snuff out the heat, at least temporarily, in the Dallas area. More on that in Storm Watch after Steve Lyons gives us the tropical update. Steve?
Well, thank you, Mike. Tropical update time, and we've got some interesting things going on out in the tropics. Nothing of real interest tropical cyclone development-wise right now, but let's start in the Gulf of Mexico. We've been looking at a trough of low pressure here in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico all day. It had looked rather ill-defined earlier today with a very weak low to mid-level center right off the mouth of the Mississippi. All afternoon we've had some thunderstorms flare up to the southeast of it. Pressures are still not dropping, but we do have a very, very weak low-level circulation there that we'll have to keep an eye on. If we look at the infrared imagery, we can see early on we didn't have too much in the way of thunderstorms. They mushroomed up, and now they're starting to weaken a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on this for you the next 24 hours. We don't expect much in the way of development quickly, if at all. Pressures are not falling, and they're relatively high up there right now. But we do have a low pressure center to keep an eye on. Now out in the Caribbean, sun's starting to set out in the extreme eastern Atlantic. We've been following a tropical wave primarily aloft. At the surface we could not find really any hint of it. And now just looking at that, you can see that the outcome of that failure to have any surface circulation shows up especially well in our satellite imagery of the cloud top temperatures. Early we had quite a flare-up of thunderstorm activity, and now you can see it's just really mid and high cloud left over, producing a pretty sunset over Puerto Rico and some of the Dominican Republic this evening. So we don't expect anything out of this, and it's starting to encounter some pretty good westerly winds, which is unfavorable for development. Now up off the eastern seaboard, we've been monitoring and following a low-level circulation that had been rather persistent the last few days. There it is right there, and it's still sitting there and not doing anything different than it had been doing. Most of the thunderstorm activity or shower activity is up to the north and to the east, and still under some shear and still tied to the mid-latitude. So we don't expect this to develop anytime soon, if at all. But it is producing some pretty good winds over to the Cape Hatteras area. If you're out there windsurfing, you know the wind is up about 20 to 25 miles per hour, and that should continue into the evening and probably into tomorrow morning as well. Farther off to the south and east, we have an upper level low pressure center, and that's producing some thunder shower activity, but no development expected from that at all. Off the coast of Africa, we've been watching a series of deep thunderstorm areas move off the coast and die rather quickly. Here's another one that early today was here and then moved off the coast and died. The primary reason for that is that we have a very, very stable high pressure that's shifted south, and this stable stratocumulus air is just cutting off all the thunderstorm potential there, which is great news. Any of our tropical waves are not going to develop in the next 24 hours. Now keep in mind, though, that if you think tropical cyclones aren't going to affect you and you live on the east or Gulf Coast, you're wrong, because everywhere from Maine all the way to South Texas, there's a potential for tropical cyclone landfall. Now some areas like Cape Hatteras in South Florida and also down here near the mouth of the Mississippi have higher potential for landfall. But in general, you should all be prepared all the time for tropical cyclone activity. Now out in the Pacific, we've been watching our tropical cyclone here. This is our tropical depression Estelle, still out there. A couple of other areas that are cloud clusters that aren't developing right now, but we expect possibility for tropical depression development in the next 24 to 36 hours. Here's Estelle, latest coordinates, 19.7 north, 135 west. That's about 1,290 miles east of Hilo, Hawaii. Winds are about 35 miles per hour. And it's really not going to do much the next 24 to 36 hours out in the middle of nowhere, and will slowly but steadily die into a low-level cloud swirl. Now we've been looking at and tracking Typhoon Otto, and it hit the China coast earlier today and now continues to be a low-level cloud swirl producing a lot of rain over that area that's already very flood prone. Well, now let's get back to the flood potential in the United States with Mike.
Thanks a lot, Steve. That's right. We have a very slow-moving low-pressure system that's getting on into eastern Iowa and Illinois, and it follows about maybe 150, 200 miles a day. That's all it's been going. So a chance to really have some excessive rainfall amounts in some parts of the Midwest. In fact, we've had some flooding going on in Grant County in Indiana, and now Madison County. Alexandria, Indiana has a flood warning in several counties in northwest Ohio, as well as some severe storm potential. We'll check on the activity in the Midwest and the rain in Texas on Weather Center coming up next.
It's gray skies as fog, flooding, and thunderstorms plague the Midwest. When will sunshine brighten the picture? Find out on Weather Center after your local forecast.
You love your cat, but hate that litter pan. Introducing the patented Litter Maid Cat Box. The only cat box that automatically cleans cat litter after every use.
When I return from work, there is no odor, there is no mess, no effort made on my part.
The amazing Litter Maid Cat Box is always on duty.
Little snowflake.
Good morning.
Hurry up, I miss my cat. I tu, mój magico. Очизгучки и прекрасные, как люблю я вас, как боюсь я вас, значит, встречу вас я не в добрый час.
I just need to get something from my room. You mind if I go alone?
Not at all.
Great. Oh, Marcia!
Hello, Harry. I didn't come to see you. I came to take your sister shopping.
Look, I know how you like things, and so, I made you something. Not real gold. Macaroni. I spray painted it.
This has absolutely no market value. And yet, I'm touched. You're either really cheap or really deep.
I'd like to think that I'm both.
I don't know why, but I want to give you something too.
Oh, no, you don't have to.
Way too much rain has fallen in northern Indiana, continues to come down heavily there, as well as in northwest Ohio, parts of southern Wisconsin. Those are a few of the areas that have some flooding going on, and there are some flash flood warnings. We'll show you those areas on radar in just a moment. First of all, though, let's talk about the tropics. As we head into the tropical update, let's start with the Gulf of Mexico here and off the east coast of the U.S. Now, there was a big flare-up of thunderstorms. This is along the end of an old, very old trough or frontal boundary that is still kind of stalled out here, if you will. There's not too much left of it. And a little wave of low pressure had developed here during the overnight hours last night into the early part of the day Wednesday. And there was a flare-up of thunderstorms with it, but most of that action has pretty much fallen apart. Pressures in the central Gulf, fairly high. There is, we still think, a weak area of low pressure out here, which may be meandering about a bit. But unless we start to see more in the way of thunderstorms clustering around where this broad area of low pressure is, we're really not too concerned about any development, at least in the short term. If this sits out here for a while, conditions still favorable, at least in the upper levels, and the water temperature is obviously very warm. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, this time of the year, it's very easy for something to spin up in the Gulf of Mexico. So when you get a cluster of storms like this, you need to monitor it very closely. If you look real closely here, you can see a spin to the atmosphere. That is an upper level low pressure area, and there are some storms that from time to time spinning around the periphery of that low, but those occasionally can spin down to the surface, so to speak, and get a surface low pressure area going if they sit in one area for a long period of time. That isn't all that common for that to happen, but occasionally it does happen. No signs of that happening there off the coast of Georgia. This system looked fairly impressive earlier, some outflow with it, but the thunderstorms have all but completely diminished, although it looks like there might be a few trying to fire up south of the island of Hispaniola. This is a very ill-defined tropical wave at this point, but upper level conditions aren't entirely unfavorable for development. We'll have to monitor it closely as it continues to move into the Western Caribbean. Right now, nothing really going on with it. Just like the system in the Gulf, unless you get some thunderstorms firing up, there is really not too much to worry about there. A couple of upper level lows. I already mentioned the one off of Georgia, but here's another one. They're kind of rotating in tandem here off the east coast. This one appears to be lifting a little bit to the northeast and away from the coast. No signs of any development there. Last couple of days we were looking at a little area of low pressure south of Hatteras, but nothing has come of that, probably because of its proximity to this upper level low, which also may be dampening, maybe pulling some dry air around it down here into the Gulf of Mexico, which may be inhibiting some of the development there. So right now things looking fairly good. There is the tail end of that tropical wave in the Caribbean. You can pretty much see the east end of it kind of moving away toward the west. Should be a beautiful day as we head on through the day Thursday in Puerto Rico, and all the Leeward and Windward Islands very, very dry. High pressure in the mid-Atlantic has suppressed everything fairly far to the south, all the way over to the African coast. A tropical wave moved off but kind of fell apart. Now a new one appears to be about ready to come off in the next 24 to 36 hours. Again, we are getting into the heart of the Cape Verde season here before too long. Usually from about mid-August to mid-September, we have to watch this area extremely closely. So far, so good. All right. First 10 days of August, again, over the last 11 years, we've had 49 storms. But as we head into the middle 10 days of August, things become even more pronounced, upwards of, I think, 70-some storms, and you can look just about anywhere for development. So again, we are getting more into the heart of the season. This is what is left of Estelle. It is still classified as a tropical depression, maybe getting a little bit of weak convection or thunderstorm action with it, but we don't think there's much of a future of it redeveloping or threatening Hawaii for sure. Winds still 35 miles per hour, 19.9 north and 136.9 west. That's over 1,000 miles east of Hilo, and we think that will continue to move into cooler waters and eventually dissipate. This system has been monitored by the Hurricane Center for the last day or two south of Cabo San Lucas. Still, there's a potential that this could develop into a tropical depression in the next 24 hours, but it looks like it is continuing to move generally to the northwest, west-northwest away from land. So we'll monitor that. And what's left of Typhoon Otto has moved onshore in China, probably enhancing some of the heavier rain there. All right, let's head back to the States quickly and talk about everything being kind of stuck in the mud, so to speak, and way too much rain right now is falling up in northern Indiana, up towards South Bend and Elkhart, and parts of northwest Ohio around the Defiance area. Again, upper level low spinning about here continues to just bring more and more rain into this vicinity. We'll have more details on the potential for flooding here at the top of the hour in our Weather Center segment. But first, a look at your own local forecast.
Blistering heat tightens its grip on much of the west, while rain brings relief to parts of Texas. An update on high temperatures next on Weather Center.
Hi, I'm Bob Vila, and I'm here to show you a great new hand tool from Sears. What you working on, Tim?
Well, I'm fixing this wheel, but these pliers make it really difficult. I mean, it takes 2 hands to adjust them, and even then it doesn't fit quite right, so I end up rounding off this nut.
Try Robo Grip instead of those slip joint pliers.